Hello, welcome to the Bigger Truth Podcast. I'm Scott McMahon. It has been a bit. I took kind of a little mini vacation for a couple days, and I was in Mason County presenting last night, and just got back. Been driving from the west side of the state, and saw that President Trump was convicted. And this is obviously unsettling news, and I just wanted to share a bit of my thoughts on this to the extent that I think that I have some unique perspective that I think is worth sharing. So I see a lot of freak out there. I was kind of looking through Xland and seeing where, how people are responding. There's some freaking out. There's some anger. There's some sense of, okay, well, Trump's going to be a martyr now. He's definitely going to win. And so I just kind of want to, I've got a few different things that I want to weigh in on. So, and ultimately, I think I am encouraged. I don't have a sense that the world's about to end, that Trump has lost, any of that. Welcome your feedback and comments as we go. So, I'm going to get right into something, part of the presentation that I gave last night, and this is something that I've been sharing now for well over a month, but I've been concerned for about 3 months about the National Convention, and there's an increased amount of discussion about the National Convention. I actually just watched Ivan Raiklin today. He did a little show today. There really wasn't anything noteworthy. He talked for about a half hour right before Trump was convicted. He did talk about the National Convention, and he said that he has thoughts about the National Convention that he's going to be sharing. He talked about it from the perspective of he sounds like he's supportive of Trump. But I think, as you can tell from his bus tour and all that, that it definitely appears that Mike Flynn is running for president. Roger Stone has said in the event that Trump is in, that they're running a contingency campaign in the event that Trump is in prison or something like that. If he can't run, then Mike Flynn's is the contingency plan. So is Trump going to prison now? I don't know. I think that they definitely want, this is definitely a hit job. I think that this is a pre-planned event. I think that there was probably I suspect, I have nothing to base, nothing factual to base this on, but I suspect that there was, I have read that there was one juror that they were concerned might hold out. And I just kind of have a suspicion that last night's adjournment or recess or whatever, sending everybody home so that they can consume their media and see all the ads, he did it ads and all this. I think that perhaps that there was some intimidation of that last juror that they might have been concerned about. I don't know. But I definitely have the sense that this was a pre-planned event. Throughout 2020, I felt like there was so much that was being done to us that we didn't really have any power or ability to do anything about. It started with COVID and all the censorship and the what appeared to be a stolen election, and Biden's 81 million votes and all this, and there's just so much that was done to us, and in a lot of ways this kind of has that same feeling, doesn't it? But I don't. I'm not overly pessimistic. Let me share this from last night's presentation, and I want to share this because I think first we've got to be aware of what we should be concerned about, and what the worst thing that could happen is, or what some of the worst things that could happen are, and so that we could prepare for that, and so that we can respond accordingly. So this is one of the slides from last night's presentation, and I'm going to be doing a members only podcast, or probably a series based on this presentation that I put together. But this one slide here, it talks about how Flynn could steal the vice president or presidential nomination. And there's kind of 4 steps. In this first step, there's a couple steps. So I said that Trump is in prison or Hakeem Jeffries is the speaker. Now, is Trump going to go to prison? I think that they really want their picture of Trump in an orange jumpsuit with leg shackles. I think that I heard, I was listening actually to George Webb this morning. He says, handcuffs isn't enough. They want leg shackles. And I agree with him. I think that they really do want that, they want those pictures just like they really wanted the mugshot. And now I think they really want to get as much as they want to milk this for as much as they can. The reality is that it's probably going to backfire on them big time. But um, but I think they're going to take this as far as they possibly can. Is he going to stay in prison? I highly doubt it. And um, yeah, I think that there's obviously going to be an appeal. And I can't imagine him not winning on the appeal. I think the appeal is going to go to the Supreme Court. I think it's likely to be expedited. And I think it's very likely that there's going to be a resolution before the national convention. And so I said here that number one, Trump is in prison or Hakeem Jeffries is speaker. Now, why Hakeem Jeffries speaker? If Hakeem Jeffries is speaker, and a short period of time before the national convention, like within a couple weeks, he somehow becomes the speaker, maybe because Steve Bannon and Flynn, the Flynn Network, and everybody else and Marjorie Taylor Greene, they just jump back on the Mike Johnson's got to go bandwagon, and they decide just in anger over what happened to Trump. Maybe they somehow retaliate by getting rid of Mike Johnson. I don't know. But if Hakeem Jeffries were to become the speaker, then I think that the first thing that he would do is put forward a resolution to declare that January 6th was an insurrection. And the reason for that is that with the Colorado Supreme Court case, where the Colorado Secretary of State removed Trump from the ballot, and the Supreme Court ruled that that they couldn't do that. And part of the justification, not all of it, but part of the justification was that one person could not decide what an insurrection is. One person couldn't define it or be the judge on that, and that it would take an act of Congress. And so that resolution, even just passed by the House, could be that act of Congress. Wouldn't have even necessarily need to go through the Senate. Just a resolution could be that act of Congress, at least for a short period of time. I don't think that it would pass an appeal. I think the Supreme Court would stop it. But it's all about the timing, right? So if this were to happen right before the convention, I'm certain that Jocelyn Benson, the Secretary of State here in Michigan, and the Secretary of State in Arizona and in many of the blue states, I think most of the Democrat secretaries of state would gleefully just declare, okay, it's constitutional. We can remove Trump from the ballot. And so if there's all these states declaring that because we allowed Hakeem Jeffries to become the Speaker of the House right before the national convention, and or if Trump is still in prison going into the national convention. I don't think if he's in prison, I don't think that'd be enough. I think that they really want the additional threat of him just not even being on the ballot. Yes, it's a historic day left of center. So yeah, if I think if those two things, especially Hakeem Jeffries becoming the speaker and declaring that, passing a resolution through the House that says that January 6th was an insurrection, then secretaries of state saying we're going to take them off the ballot, then there could be a collective panic going into among the national delegates going into the national convention. Excuse me. So that being the case, we have the delegates from almost every state are bound in the first round of voting at the national convention to vote according to the results of the primary election in that state. And every state has different rules about how they're bound, how long they're bound, how many rounds they're bound for. The RNC rule is they're bound for the first round, and most states they're bound for the first round. So being bound means that they have to vote according to how their primary election, that state's primary election, determined they're to vote. However, if there's a rule change, and that's what this slide is about, if there is a rule change, then we could see, delegates not voting for Trump or voting however they want or how they're instructed to vote. And that's where this kind of gets concerning. And what would it take to get a rule change? According to RNC rules, it takes 8 states. And if a supermajority from one state in writing in advance of the convention makes a motion for essentially to suspend the rules, and then 7 other states second that, then the rules are suspended for the nomination or for the convention, and then all bets are off. They can vote. The delegates are no longer bound. And yes, that's Pat. That is extremely concerning. So now these 8 states here, these red dots, are states where I am almost certain, just based on the analysis that I've given to the slates that have been nominated or likely will be nominated in each of these 8 states. This is Washington, Idaho, Oregon, Arizona, Colorado, Nebraska, Missouri, and Oklahoma. I also believe it's likely in Georgia, but I haven't given that enough study, and I'm not familiar enough there. And Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Nevada, those are also possibilities. But I can say really for certainty that and based on my own study, that these 8 states, a supermajority, 2/3 supermajority, are trained chaos agents and people who have been trained and practiced in county, district, and state conventions in creating chaos in the convention, manipulating the crowd, spreading themselves out. It's this like psychological warfare type training that they've received. And so, yes, this is really concerning. I think that Nikki Haley's likely to have some leverage. I don't think that she's going to get the nomination, but I think she's likely to have some leverage. And I think that, they're what I predict is funny business. I predict chaos and disorder and confusion. And what comes out of that is, I don't think anyone can necessarily predict. But I think that what the chaos agents, the operators, I think what they want is Flynn. I think that they want Flynn. I think that the deep state, that he is their guy. He belongs to the deep state. I think that he's who they want. And so I think they're going to try to create madness within the crowd in order to get that to happen. I think that they're going to try to somehow politically poison Mike Johnson to try to try to get the Marjorie Taylor Greenes, the Matt Gaetzes to try to get rid of Mike Johnson, knowing full well that might end up putting Hakeem Jeffries in place. So Left of Center says, is this my analysis? This is 100% my analysis. I have not seen this anywhere else. What I've said about the rules, I've confirmed with members of the RNC. This is 100% my original analysis about the convention. So based on discussion with many past and present delegates, analysis of what's happening in the state GOPs throughout the country, this is what this is really what I've been studying for the last 6 months. So, and your comment earlier about you don't think that he should get jail time. And yeah, I definitely agree that it's just too much imprisoning a candidate in an election year. And I think that most people would agree with you. And I assume that you don't support Trump, but it's gracious of you to say that, and I obviously agree that he should not get jail time. And it's my opinion that just from following the what's happened in the court, that the judge was exhibited some clear bias and should have recused himself from the beginning. But and I can't imagine this ruling not being overturned in an appeal. So um, so this is kind of, I just shared here kind of a doomsday scenario, I think, for Republicans. We, as Republican voters across the country, we elected Trump. We nominated Trump. We had the power to vote in our presidential primaries, and we chose Trump. The people, and it's not all Republicans, because a lot of states have open primaries where Democrats can vote too. But the outcome of those elections were overwhelmingly for Trump, and more overwhelmingly than in any recent year, and in any recent presidential election year. So if that choice were taken away from the voters, it would be a terrible precedent. And I really hope and pray that it doesn't happen, but it could. And so I just want to share that, because and this is something that I don't think anyone is seeing anywhere. And there is some talk about, well, what could happen at convention. And so what I just laid out is how it could happen. There's it definitely could happen. Do I think it's going to happen? I actually don't. I obviously I hope it doesn't, but I really don't. And I think, left of center, I agree with you that I don't think that he should face jail time. I think that it's likely that there's going to be a rapid appeal process with the Supreme Court, that they're going to appeal directly to the Supreme Court. I think that they're going to expedite it as much as they can, because I think that, the precedence of this is just extraordinary. And I think, yeah, you say that Trump's inner circle is on video saying he would declare fraud if he lost the 2020 election. Then he did lose, convinced people it was rigged, and they violently protested at the Capitol. So I actually disagree with a few of what I think are your underlying assumptions, and I'm going to have some more on that. I'd love to even have an offline discussion with you about that, but especially that they violently protested at the Capitol. I think that the people that were engaging in violence were feds. There were at least 200 FBI agents there that were inciting, dressed as Trump supporters, and there was Antifa there as well. So, and there were some people that lost their way on that day. And even if the police are holding the door open, and for you, it's still that there were a lot of people that have learned the hard way that there's lines that you just don't cross. And we've seen, and I've talked about, and perhaps not enough, but I've been talking about and writing about the danger that Ivan Raiklin and Mike Flynn and what they're trying to instigate, that there's just some real danger, and they're trying to incite a reaction from people, a violent reaction, just like this. That Flynn was involved in trying to incite that leading up to January 6th. He was very close with the First Amendment Praetorian Guard. The First Amendment Praetorian Guard was involved with the Oath Keepers, and Joe Flynn, the 1AP, the First Amendment Praetorian, and many within Mike Flynn's circle were talking very aggressively leading up to January 6th, talking about the importance of, fighting back, and we needed to get ready to be armed if they got away with stealing the election. There was a lot of incitement, and that same type of language and it has been coming from Flynn and Raiklin and others. And Raiklin's been talking about these live swatting raids. And so, Patrick, yeah, so, and I will be tuning in more. I watched, you said that Flynn and company are speaking in tune today, and they're up to something, and it is clear that they're up to something. And I think that what they're trying to incite a nationwide, county by county, township by township, um, yeah, insurrection. I mean, that's what live swatting raids are, that are completely unconstitutional. Ivan Raiklin declares himself to be a constitutional lawyer, and yet he's talking about, um, on county sheriffs don't have the jurisdiction to arrest um, a federal judge that happens to be traveling through that county, and that's exactly what he suggested on somebody's podcast last week. And this is dangerous stuff. This is just absolutely crazy, dangerous stuff. And they're talking about doing these like citizen arrests, and that is going to be highly publicized. And I'm seeing people saying, we got to get angry, we got to get even. We can't just sit around here and do nothing. Well, all right. So let's talk about what we can do. Because I agree we shouldn't just sit around and do nothing. And I think that we've got the First Amendment, and we've got the Second Amendment, and the Second Amendment should only be used in the event that the First Amendment is uh, it no longer exists, and we still have a First Amendment. And so, talking right now, having this conversation, learning, studying, sharing our thoughts, having the right to be wrong, to speak whatever it is, to seek truth, um, and to talk about good ideas and bad ideas, so in that pursuit, and to expose the liars, to expose people like Flynn and his whole network. And it's his whole network is much more than just the podcast network that is being talked about more and more. His network goes into, um, I was reading about Pegasus this morning, which is a software that was developed by this company called NSO, that out of Israel, and it's a military hardware software device of some sort that's able to isolate a particular phone, and um, and basically hack into that phone, and wiretap, track your phone calls, your text messages, your emails, everything you're doing on that phone, have complete access to that phone. And Mike Flynn was on the board of the American subsidiary of NSO up until December of 2016, while he was on the Trump campaign. He was on the board, and he was one of their primary lobbyists, along with Rod Rosenstein. This is just, it's unbelievable. So that has, on my list now, I've got 12 different operations that Mike Flynn has been involved in to destroy the conservative populist movement from within. And Mike Flynn has put himself in the position of being kind of the figurehead, or a figurehead, below Trump, of course, but a figurehead of the conservative populist movement, and not necessarily below in an org chart, but below in certainly in popularity, and importance. But and Flynn is trying to destroy us and lead us into our own destruction. And so that's, I guess, if there's a real reason why I wanted to come on here live, is just to warn people to be calm, like to not to react, not to buy into um, these calls to violence, to revolution, because the revolution that they're calling for is not the American style revolution. It's French Revolution. It's mob rule. And what comes out of the vacuum of mob rule is always tyranny. It is always tyranny. And that they know that, and that's what they're trying to create. So um, I was thinking, actually, before coming on, I was thinking about Abraham Lincoln. And I want to see if I can share my screen and pull up. I want to pull up the Wikipedia on the Convention of 1860. I should have prepared, but I thought I had this thought right as I was going live. And here we go. All right, here it is. I hope you can see that. Okay, good. So the Republican Convention of 1860. Oh, come on now. What did I do? All right, here we go. All right, talking to myself. So the 1860 Republican Convention. This is really the beginning of. This is the first Republican convention. So the Whig Party was formed by Thomas Jefferson, and um, it fell apart. It really fell apart in a short period of time, beginning in like 1852 is when it started to wane. And then it was completely gone by 1856, 1857. And um, the party actually started, the birthplace of the party was actually Jackson, Michigan, um, was where the kind of the first real Republican Party meeting was. Now, the reason why I bring up this convention is, and what was really interesting. So this is the convention where they were nominating the first Republican nominee uh, was going to come out of this convention. And going into it, there was talk about Abraham Lincoln, but not as the front runner. The front runner was William Seward of New York, and um, then there was Lincoln, and then the governor of Ohio named Salmon Chase, and Edward Bates of Missouri. But and Lincoln was kind of down in the pack as far as the talk about him. He had a some debates that had kind of put him forward, but he was definitely not the front runner, and he did not win in the first round of voting. Seward had the most votes, but what the reason why I bring it up is because of the platform. Let me see. I'm pretty sure it's in here. The Rather than read the whole thing, I know it's in here, but he talks about what he was talking about in his speech, and this was before the Civil War started, and um, but there was a great deal of fear about the Civil War happening, and um, he preached what Abraham Lincoln was really kind of his platform. What he decided would be his platform would be this platform of moderation. He really wanted to be the moderate candidate. He didn't want to incite a civil war. And I think most Republicans, especially those who are at the convention, but really, I think especially throughout the northern states, the Republicans were really afraid of a civil war. They really didn't want it. They wanted some sort of a diplomatic solution, but there was also the desire to end slavery and to, there was so much. We were clearly at an impasse. And Seward went into that convention saying, "We've got it. We just have to declare war. We need to stop this. It's what they're doing is evil." He was taking a very hard stance, which is very similar to the purity tests and everything that we've seen from the kind of, I hate to even call it the far right within the party, but the disruptor group within the party that has been applying these purity tests, and they have been the chaos agents within the party. And Seward was kind of like that. But Lincoln came in and said, what I want, and I want to be a president of moderation. The Republican Party is a party of moderation, and we need to seek moderation. And I think that this message of moderation, and through that, and what he said is that I don't know what's going to happen, and I don't want there to be war, which is where we should be. I mean, we don't want revolution. We don't want mob rule. We don't want to burn it all down. One of the memes in the Republican Party, in the far right of the party, is if it all burns down, so be it. And I think that is completely wicked. That is not. I do not agree with that whatsoever. What we want is moderation. I think the Republican Party needs to get back to the party of being the party of moderation. That's how we win elections. Trump's been talking about being too big to rig. So if there's election fraud, okay, but we're going to be bigger than the election fraud. We're going to have a big tent. We're going to be really the party of moderation. He has been the people that he has been associating with, the people within his inner circle, are people that we would consider to be moderate Republicans. Chris LaCivita is just crushing it. He is Trump's kind of lead political consultant. He's also the executive director of the RNC, and so that kind of partnership there between the Trump campaign and the RNC gives me a lot of encouragement personally. And they are doing really good work. The RNC is doing good work, and Michael Whatley is the chair. He's also a great parliamentarian. I think that they know that there's all kinds of threats. I heard, I think it was Raheem Kassam. He was talking about the national convention, and he said that he was talking to somebody in the Trump campaign, and they said that they know about threats to Trump at the national convention, and they said, well, there's probably about 18 different ways that the nomination could be stolen from Trump. So I think they have some level of awareness of what's happening. Excuse me. But I think the solution is to be moderate, to be patient. We want slow justice. We don't want fast justice. And when there's a bad judge, like Trump just had a very bad judge. I think no matter how you slice it, he had a bad judge. We need to be patient for the appeal process. We have an appeal process for a reason, for this very reason, and it takes time. Patrick says Flynn has the funding, but the good patriots will be used to create state-to-state insurrection in key areas. We must stay law and order until it is exhausted. I could not agree with you more, Patrick. That is very well said. And people are really being used, and people with good intentions have been suckered into, where Flynn and these other operators in every state are leading them, which is creating chaos and insurrection. And it's not just state to state, but it's township by township and county by county. My last podcast, I went into quite a bit of depth about that with the Gideon 300, things that Joe Altman and David Clements are doing to really work. They're deliberately trying to incite a township by township, county by county insurrection. And really heavily here in Michigan, but in Arizona and a lot of key states, but I think nationwide. Both sides of the political spectrum have been radicalized at their fringes. Bring back moderates, absolutely. And so, and I think that's part of the whole objective of this, of what I've been describing, is to try to drive the Republicans so far to the right, the Republican Party so far to the right, that it's no longer a viable electoral alternative to what the Democrats are doing, because they've gone so far to the left. And I think that the one thing that we can really come together on is a sense of moderation, and we should be able to agree on the First Amendment. We should be able to agree on the entire Bill of Rights. And right now we have even people within the Republican Party who are talking about Christian nationalism, which is a complete violation of the First Amendment, saying that only Christians should be able to be involved in government. Is just absurd. And the jury decides, not the judge. Okay, well, the judge gave the most wickedly insane set of orders to the jury that I've ever seen in a major public trial. There was a very, very bad judge. He was sustaining every objection that that the prosecution had, and overruling every objection that or maybe have it the other way around, that the defense had. But it was the judge was in no way fair, and really slanted the jury and in so many ways. And on that basis, I think it's very likely to be appealed. One more question from you. Do you believe Flynn's supporters are well organized, or are they keyboard warriors? The whole thing feels like a grift, not real political work. I think that they are highly well. So the organization is like it is a military style intelligence operation. So it's organized in the same way that a color revolution, that the CIA or the DIA would, because he was the head of the DIA. It's the same way that the DIA was involved in intelligence operations in Afghanistan. So as it filters down, it probably looks like it's not very well organized, but at the top, it's extremely well organized. And it's within the state parties, it's kind of like an NGO type organization where there's all these different organizations that all have very similar goals. And as I've looked at it within the state Republican parties, that they are extremely well organized, and they really do work together. They may have different organizations that do recruiting of delegates, and but they're all working together to indoctrinate them in the same ways, using the same goals and methods, and in coordination with each other. So yeah, it is extremely well organized. And even here in Michigan, after Christina Karamo was removed, that they have really doubled down in a very organized way, and that they've created some new organizations, and they're clearly extremely well funded. So so what do we do? And that's where I want to end, is with what do we do, and where do we go from here? And what I believe is what we need to do is, first, we need to be peaceful. But we need to win. We need to win a victory for moderation. I believe that Trump is, he's going to be a moderate president. I think he's going to already. You can see within the Republican Party, the people that are the extremists are very frustrated with Trump, and I think that's the way it should be. And I think he should not be playing towards what used to be considered his base, and he's not. He very clearly is not. And I think he's trying to go as big tent as possible, and I think he's going to be a moderate president, and I think he's going to work on taking out the bureaucratic deep state, which I think is the most important issue. And that, to me, I'm a single issue voter this year, and it's on taking out the Marxist bureaucratic deep state that has produced Mike Flynn, and they want to control every aspect of our lives. And I think that we need a hard reset to disempower the executive branch in Washington, D.C. in particular. And that's something that the president has the power and ability to do constitutionally. And so, and he, from what I read, he's got a very good plan in how to accomplish that, and the people that I've spoken to that are close to that, and I think he can do it. And I think we can elect him. And one of the things that we need to do is vote early. I think the Democrats have, in most states, here in Michigan, this is the case, they have a 2-to-1 advantage in early voting. And we need a red wave of permanent absentee voter registration. And I will, in the show notes here, I will include a link on where to go to register in Michigan. And I don't know where it is in your state. If you'd like to send me a link to use in your state that I can put in the show notes, so please do, and I'll include it. It took me once I was logged in and had my driver's license in front of me, it took me all of 45 seconds to register and put myself on the permanent absentee voter list. As long as that's the way the state laws are written, we need to do it. And we can't. Somebody told me last night that there's 5,000 precincts here in Michigan. If just 20 people in each of those precincts in Michigan, 20 Republicans, forget to vote, something comes up, or whatever, and they wait to vote on election day, but they just don't vote for whatever reason. They get hurt. Who knows? They get called into work for a double shift, whatever. Just 20 people in each precinct. That's 100,000 voters statewide. That was right here. Randy Guppy said that last night. Thank you for coming last night. He said it took him less than 60 seconds. Yes. So yeah, 100,000 votes, and we really need to register on that you register on the permanent AV list, you get mailed a ballot for every primary, every special election, every general election, and that gives you the time to consider who you're going to vote for and really contemplate over your ballot. You can always spoil your ballot and bring it in and then vote on election day, or you could fill out your ballot in advance and bring it in on election day if you wanted to do that. Or you can drop it off early and then you can work the polls and help be there when those ballots are opened leading up to election day. And if you're concerned about election integrity, that's the way to do it. So we need to vote early. We need to be statesmen. We need to humbly examine our assumptions and really pursue truth and moderation. I think just really embracing moderation is it's not sexy, but I think it's needed. And this is kind of a new idea to me. I've always been a pretty extreme kind of person, and so I really do think that there's a lot of wisdom in seeking not just the middle road, but seeking to build a coalition of voters and of people, and seeking support and the spirit of compromise. All of these things are just really important, and we have really rejected them, and we need to get back to it. So, oh, awesome. So you've got the graphic with the QR code. Let me see if I can, did you email it to me? If you emailed it to me, I can pull it up. You texted it to me, but I will put it, I'll put it in the show notes. So thank you for that. So with that, thank you all. Thank you, Randy, for sending that to me. I'll make sure it's in the show notes. And I'll share it too. I shared it the other day on social media. I'll share it again. So appreciate you all for joining me, and let's just kind of chill. The world's not going to end. And everything's going to be okay. So we'll find the way. And I still think that Trump is going to win. I think that he's going to get the nomination. He's going to win in November, and we're going to have Republicans win down ballot, and we're going to do everything that we can to restore our republic, and to do so peacefully, constitutionally, and in a way that brings people together, and so we'll go from there. And that I was just going through, make sure I got all the comments. So appreciate y'all, and until next time.